Good. How are you? All right. We're live everywhere. Hello, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about what I perceive to be the three biggest scams of today's society. Okay, and this is me doing clickbait because, of course, this is a very hyperbolic title, and I know that. But I do think that these three things that I'm going to talk about today are kind of foundations for the matrix that we're all trying to escape as spiritual people or awake people or just people who want to feel better in our lives. And I think that when we can look at these things and really question them and how they're affecting how these ideas are affecting us in our personal lives, we can start to unpack and unravel the toxic consensus reality that's continuing to keep itself going to profit the very few at the expense of the many. And so again, I know that these aren't all of the bad things about society, and this isn't an exhaustive list. And you may have things that you think are worse than the things that I'm going to talk about, and that's totally legit. Again, I'm just going to speak to the three things that I think are really foundational for all of us to look at when we're like, okay, how do I start to build a healthier life for myself? And what in society is actually good and what in society is actually bad in terms of being just actually supportive of the human experience and being counter to the human experience. These three things are the most important things to look at, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm going to list them right now, and then we're going to go deep and broad and wide and do all the things we usually do. So the first scam of our society, the first big scam of our society is the idea that productivity in and of itself is a virtue. To be productive in and of itself, to be someone who is being something, someone who is producing something, means that you are worthy and good. And if you are not being productive, if you are not producing something that society values, if you don't fit into what we all think of as being valuable production, you are not valuable. You are not virtuous. You are not good. So the first scam, being production in and of itself, is a virtue. Okay. Lie number 2. The second biggest scam of our society is accumulation for itself equaling safety, happiness, status, virtue, and accumulation at all costs, expansion at all costs, being always good. And then the third scam of our society is that by behaving in a certain way and dressing a certain way and getting yourself to become something that is a blueprint handed to you by whatever culture you live in, is the way to connection. That by becoming a thing that's better than the thing that you are right now, that's different than the thing that you are right now, that by changing who and what you fundamentally are as a human being and what you're doing and being and experiencing and wanting and liking and not liking right here, right now, that by changing that in some way to become more pleasing is how you will have that feeling of genuine connection. Those are the three biggest scams of our capitalist society that have been going forever and ever and ever and ever, okay? These things are not new. These things are, my pointing them out is not novel. That I don't assume this is unique. It's just that I want to say it again because again, I think the more we look at it, the more we dissect it, the more we pick it all apart, the more we're going to be able to support ourselves again in finding a pragmatic way of life that actually works for the human being. Okay, now to back up a little bit, we do want to acknowledge that not all of consensus reality, as in not everything, in the way that we function as human beings is bad. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't want to say all of culture is fucked up, even all of capitalism, all of our power structures, everything is horrible, we need to throw it all out. Because we have to understand that as beings who are on our evolutionary process, we don't have all the answers. We don't know everything. We are absolutely figuring things out as we go. We are making mistakes. And that's just part of evolution. Rather than thinking that we have like a society of people who are at all times capable of complete transcendence and building an amazing society that would actually work for all of us, and thinking that we're just not doing that, that we have that capacity, that we have that awareness, that we have that ability, and that we're just not doing it because evil people are ruling the world, it's a little bit of a short-sighted way of looking at things. Okay, absolutely, 100%, this is not a conspiracy theory. The people who have the power on our planet, generally speaking, aren't fashioning the systems of our society in a way that would be most beneficial for the most amount of people. And I think that that shouldn't be a controversial statement at all at this point in our reality. And I also think that it's very, very important that we say that we do have a lot of pretty good evidence and information about what doesn't work for the general population. And at this point, we absolutely could have better systems and better ways of life that, again, work better for the general population than the ones that we have now. And I think that a big part of the reason why we are stuck in the systems that we're in, because number one, it's true. The people who are in power have the money and they have the power. So it's very difficult to shift systems when the people who are benefiting most from the system are at the top of the system. Right? Like to understand that those of us who try to be environmentalists and who are trying to use less plastic and do all of these things, we have to realize that, again, like so much of what we do on a daily basis to try to make things better for the environment is like a drop of essential oil on a full body cancer. It's like, it's just not that much compared to what corporations are doing, right? Like at this point, we kind of understand if we really want to bend the needle in the way of being better for the environment. And literally, you don't even have to believe that climate change exists or any of these things. I think, again, it shouldn't be a controversial statement that like the amount of plastic we are generating and throwing away is not good. It is harmful for us and the planet. And yet, we are continually being told it's up to the consumer to make better choices. When it's like, no, at this point, it's up to the producer. Corporations need to stop using so much plastic. It's not that we, the consumer, are choosing items that are wrapped in plastic because we want plastic. We are choosing items that are wrapped in plastic because those are the items that are available. You see what I'm saying? So, again, I am not here to say that like all the power is in our hands and we can just create a whole new society if we just change our minds, because this is clearly untrue. However, we, the people who are not at the top of the system, have to understand where our power lies, which is so much in our participation of the system. The more we participate in the ways of being that are keeping the system going, without realizing it most of the time, when we are participating in the systems in ways we don't have to be participating in the system, we are helping to keep it going. So again, we might not be able to force the changes that we want to see on this planet right now, but by understanding where we are playing the game that we have been taught to play, that we have been manipulated into playing. By seeing where we are being manipulated into going along with a system that is not good for us, because we are being told this is the right way to be, this is the right thing to do. If you do not do these things, you will be rejected and you will be cast out and you will be alone and you will die. That's what's happening. The more we can start to say, actually, that isn't good for me. I don't have to participate in that. And by not participating in that, I give the people who are in power less power. That's where we can affect change. And again, all of us have a very different and unique amount of power. All of us have a different amount that we are capable of making a choice to step out of the system the way that it's functioning. So for instance, if you are living paycheck to paycheck and you have not been given the opportunity to go to post-secondary, you're being held out of certain spaces, generationally you've been held out of certain spaces, there are obstacles in your path that are very real obstacles. It's not your job to boycott Walmart if that is the only kind of food and clothing and things like this that you can afford, right? Like to say everyone needs to just stop supporting corporations and support local business and do all of these things, we have to be realistic. That's not a financial choice that some people can make. And that's not their fault and that's not their failing. And it's not on them to make that choice. If you're in that situation where you're just trying to keep your head above water, keep your head above water, right? The system is failing you, probably more than it's failing other people. It might be antagonizing you more than it's antagonizing other people. These are just the realities. We all have different levels of access and capacity and things that we can do. But if you're someone who has a pretty steady job and you have disposable income, you have time, you have the resources to support local businesses, you should. This is what we need to think about. It's not about being good and it's not about being bad and it's not about being right and it's not about being virtuous. It's about being pragmatic. Where do we have the power to shift the system in a better way? And that's why I'm saying we draw it back to ourselves. We draw it back to what our conditioning is and what we've been conditioned into. We draw it back to what is actually helpful in terms of like the bigger picture. And we look at that. And then we, again, put ourselves in the context of where we actually are and the power we actually have. And we say, what can I do from where I am? And you don't compare yourself to what other people who are in a different place than you can do or can't do. You don't look at someone who has less resource and less access than you and say, you're not pulling your weight because you're not doing all the things that I do with the access and resource that I have. That's not okay. And then vice versa. You see? So again, before I start, this is never about feeling shame or guilt or blame that you are doing these things or that you're participating in these things or that you've believed these things or that you are continuing to participate in these things, because again, we all live in a system that none of us created. And if we can start with that foundation, we're going to have a much better time working through this without it feeling like an attack on our self-esteem. None of us chose the systems we are living in. None of us created the systems we are living in. We were all born into these systems. We did not choose them, and we have been trying to survive within them to the best of our ability, giving, right? And again, depending on where you are on the totem pole of society, this has been easier or harder for you. And the more you have struggled to keep yourself alive, of course, the less you're going to have the access and the resource to try to make it better for other people. And even that's not true, right? Like we still see so many people who have so little and they still are working to make things better for others. And we see so many people who have so much and who are continuing to focus on themselves. And so again, we should never have blame or guilt about any of these things. We just need to say, okay, this is what it is. This is the system we're all born into. None of us chose it. Some of us are benefiting from it in ways that other people aren't. And that is reality. And now what can I do to move the needle towards something that would be better for all of us? Right? And so we look at, okay, what are the big lies? What are the big scams that keep all of us participating in a system that doesn't work for us, but that absolutely works to keep those at the top at the top? That's what we want to look at. Where are we participating in the indoctrination that this is what it is to be a good person, this is what it is to be a valuable person, this is what is going to lead to success, this is what is going to lead to goodness, this is what is going to lead to your safety, that are lies that keep us blaming and shaming and self-improving and rejecting and thinking there's something wrong with us when we're suffering, or when we're not getting our needs met, or when we're not feeling connected, when we don't have enough provision, and turning it into us blaming other people, that they're just making bad choices and they're irresponsible and they're bad people. Where are we living in alignment with a way of being because we're afraid that if we don't, we will be rejected? And that is being continually fed into our brains over and over and over again as a method of manipulation to keep us doing the things that are just normal in culture, that all lead to the people in power having more power and more resources and more of everything at the expense of us. Okay, so that number one lie being that productivity in and of itself is a virtue. That is a lie. There is absolutely no virtue in productivity itself. In real reality, productivity is a means to an end, and that's it. The point of productivity, the entire purpose of producing something, is to get a need met, to express something that needs to be expressed, to fill an actual purpose within real reality. Anything that's not doing those three things has no pragmatic purpose. And therefore, the energy we put in to producing something that doesn't actually get a need met, that doesn't help us express something that needs to be expressed, that doesn't support the forwarding momentum of humanity and the planet that we live on, is then wasted energy. It is energy that was spent on something that didn't take us forward, that didn't generate conditions for life, and therefore it was degenerative. And this is something that our society does not understand. That there is absolutely a such thing as productivity that is bad for us in that way. Bad for us meaning it's degenerative. It's not leading to more life. It's not leading to better life. It's not leading to higher quality of life. It's energy being spent on something that in the end does nothing for us, or is negative, causes harm. Our obsession with production is polluting the planet. Our obsession with production is watering down and diluting profit and the capacity to share wealth. It's leading to us as a society collectively having a judgment against people who are not producing the right amount in the right ways, so that when those people don't have enough provision to stay alive or to be happy or to be healthy, we don't care. We think they deserve it. We've been brainwashed into thinking that people who don't have enough just aren't working hard enough. They're not producing the right things. They're not producing at the level they should be. They're producing something we don't really value that much. And therefore, their life is worth less than the people who are making shit tons of money at whatever they produce. Like, we are conditioned to have this judgment of productivity and judging the human being as worthy or unworthy of provision and safety and connection and support and help based on how the economy values their production. That is insane. Like, and I'm saying this like about myself. I'm saying it that it's insane, not that any one of us, again, have chosen to have that judgment, because we haven't. None of us chose to have that. We were indoctrinated into that. When we walk by a homeless person on the street and we assume they should be there, that's not like a conscious choice we're making to be judgmental. We were indoctrinated. The fact that there are billions of people on this planet who don't have the opportunity to create a good life for themselves by being productive within a system that can generate wealth is no reflection on the value of that life. Not in real reality. And this is like a shitty, hard thing for us to swallow, because it means that, yeah, life is right now a complete lottery. And you're either born into a situation where there's opportunity for you to work and do the things you need to do to have a good life for yourself, or you aren't. And that can be really heartbreaking for us. And we can look for and we can strive to find a reason why that is happening to certain people and why it's not happening to others. We can get into a space where we want to validate that the people who have so much more than they need have it for a good reason. They were productive. They did the right things. And yet, when we peel back the curtain and we look again at what the people who have the most in our societies do, what they're producing, a lot of the time it's ownership. They aren't really producing anything. They just own the thing that produces a thing that we need, and other people are doing the work. And then again, with this obsessive overproduction, the wealth that is being distributed to the workers is being completely diluted. Well, most of it is being hoarded for people at the top. And the people at the top, generally speaking, were born halfway, 3/4 of the way up the mountain already. They're not there through virtue of working themselves from nothing to billionaire. They were invested in by society, they were invested in by parents, they were invested in by having resources and access and the ability to go to school and invent things. Like, even if they produce great things, they didn't come from nowhere. Someone and something invested in them at some point. And so we have to understand this. That at this point, our continuing to produce and consume at rates beyond what is actually meeting the needs of the people is creating a situation where more people who could be given enough who could be valued in our system way more than they're being valued aren't. Like, we don't value janitors, we don't value the grocery store clerk, we don't value teachers and nurses, we don't value people who are growing up in communities where they don't have access to education, where there's food deserts, where there's all these things, because we say they're not really producing anything we care about based on culture, and therefore those people just don't deserve to have safety. And then when they are involved in crime or drugs or any of these things to try to cope with their situation, we say, see, look, they're horrible. Become productive. And by become productive, what do we mean? Like, become a CEO of a company that does what? Produces a whole bunch of plastic for all of us to consume shit that we don't need? Right? Like, the owners of Coca-Cola are incredibly rich. Are they doing something good for society? Are they doing something good for their workers? No. But we value them, or we continue to support their products and do all these things because, again, what do their problems do? What do their products do? They help us cope and numb. And then, again, we've been conditioned that you drink Coca-Cola, you're this kind of person, and it makes you fit in this way. It's status symbol. You won't be rejected. It'll keep you safe. And so over and over and over again, we look at ourselves when we don't have enough money or resource. We look at others who don't have enough money or resource, and we think, you're just not valuable. You're not doing the right things. When in reality, if we look at it, we're like, no, the system is messed up. Why? Why are grocery store clerks people we actually fucking need, making minimum wage like not enough to support themselves, and we look down on them as being uneducated and whatever? But CEOs of companies and shareholders are taking home millions of dollars a year to sit around and be like, yeah, people seem to like this. They're being paid millions of dollars a year to destroy the environment and to exploit their workers. And we say that's reasonable. That's what we value. But it's, again, we're not, right? We're not looking at it that way. What we're looking at is, I'm not making enough money because I'm not valuable. And that's what the system has told us our entire lives. It's my fault. Like, how many self-help money gurus have you heard say, you want more money? Increase the amount of value you give to the world. And they think they're saying it like this virtuous thing. Right? Like, become a better coach, become a better life coach, become a better entrepreneur, whatever you do. Okay, at this point, you want to make big amounts of money? You're, right? Becoming a better life coach is almost never going to do that for you. You're going to have to, in quotes, right, sell out. You're going to have to be valuable to brands. And what is valuable to a brand? Someone who pushes their product onto people who don't actually need it. Someone who continues to sell the dream of you can become wealthy and successful and beautiful and young like me if you buy these products. Because these are the products that I buy. And these are the products that I use. And here's my affiliate code. Right? What our society values and the things that we actually say are production and productive and good aren't. Because again, the grocery store clerk, the nurse, the teacher, the janitor, they are producing things that we absolutely cannot live without as a society. Their production, in terms of real value, is very valuable. And And yet, we pay them very little. And we say, you're just not valuable to our society. You want more money? Increase your productivity. And again, CEOs who sit on boards and what? Decide what kind of plastic we're going to use. Manage shareholder, whatever. Cut pay for people so that there's more for the shareholders. They make millions of dollars. Producing what? Most of the time, shit humanity doesn't actually need. That's bad for us and bad for the environment. Because it makes us feel good. So that we can continue working in this system that's fucking shitty. Right? Like all the massive amounts of just TV shows and junk food and all the things that we use to distract ourselves. And then we feel bad about ourselves for using them. When, again, how much of the time is that's the only thing that's available? That's the only thing you actually have the time and the energy to do. How much of the time is it you're miserable in your job and you're miserable in your relationship and you're miserable in your life because the system sucks and you're coping and you're numbing and you're stimulating with this product that you've been indoctrinated your whole life is also going to get you acceptance and love and approval. Right? Like, we can't blame ourselves. We can change, we can see it, we can do new things, but to say like this is my fault, that's totally a lie. It's the system is shitty, we don't value what's actually valuable, and we're saying production is a valuable thing in and of itself. Working hard is a thing that should be praised, which it's like, no. In real reality, we should be saying, do the right amount of work to produce the things that are actually valuable and actually necessary, and anything past that is a waste of energy. Go spend time enjoying yourself. We have the technology to produce enough, to distribute enough, to preserve nature, and we're just not because we've been brainwashed. So that's the first thing. Production is not a virtue. If you are not making enough money, it's not because you aren't producing something of value to the system. Like, because you are not valuable. It's usually because you are producing something that is not deemed as valuable to the system, and the system has totally fucked up values. So don't blame yourself. And then from there, we start to say, okay, where can I pull back? Because again, we have to understand, the more we are capable, so again, this goes back to the beginning. If you're able, we are not all the same amount of able, we do not all have the same capacity, we have to judge it based on where we are in the system, and it is not our fault where we are in the system. How can we stop participating in overconsumption and overproduction so that we weaken that system overall? Where can we start deprogramming ourselves from this idea that productivity is a virtue, not just for ourselves so that we can rest and enjoy ourselves and not continue to overproduce when we don't need to overproduce, and not continue to overconsume where we don't need to overconsume, because all that stuff is good and we do it for ourselves, but also so we can do it for other people. So we can be a part of the change that makes it easier for other people who have less opportunity to get out of the system to get out of the system. We start redistributing resources. We start taking less when we don't need it. We start producing less so that we stop diluting profit. The more we do this, the more we deprogram ourselves, the more we change what we're doing, the more we cause change ripple out. So that's the first lie. Okay? Production being a virtue is a scam. It's a total scam. It's not true. Second thing, Accumulation and expansion for the sake of it is always making us safer. This is another massive lie of the system. That the more you have, the more you can hoard, the more you can accumulate, the more you can expand, the better you are, the more powerful you are, and the more you can do good on this planet. Even that is a lie. Okay, again, to a degree. So again, we're not going to deny reality. To a degree, having money, access, and resources really does make your life better. Like all the self-help gurus who are sitting there in their mansions telling you to just have a positive mindset, and that's how they got there. They manifested it from like talking to God or whatever. No, they didn't. They manifested it because they had money and they had access. A lot of them are solving their problems because they can afford to solve their problems, right? They don't get sick, or when they get sick, it's okay. Not because they have the right mindset, but because they can afford to rest and they can afford healthy food and they can afford healthcare. It's not magic. It's resources. It's money. They wrote the best-selling book because they had fucking time to do it. They had enough money and enough resources and enough safety to spend time writing a book. So it's not to say those things aren't valuable. It's not to say those things aren't good. It's to say it's no show of virtue. And then again, it is to say that a lot of us have problems that 100% could and would be solved by money. We're struggling in ways that we're struggling because we don't have the resources to buy our way out of our problems. So to a degree, 100%, having enough money that you can reasonably take care of yourself makes your life better than when you don't. So there is that. But beyond that, the luxury, the hoarding so much more than you'll ever need, the fame, the thing that the celebrities and the millionaires of our culture represent, that lifestyle of like, look at how much more I have than I actually need. Look at my shiny skin and my perfect nails and my helicopter and my airplane. But even less than that, right? Like, look at my designer bag and look at my belt and look at my nice apartment. Like, all of this shit that, again, keeps us indoctrinated into this system of like, well, the rich people deserve it. And we want to continue to believe that having the capacity to get that wealthy is a good thing in our society. We don't want to redistribute resource in a way that would be fair, so everyone has enough, but no one has excess. Because we are still looking at the people who have so much more than us and being tricked into thinking that that makes us happy. It doesn't. They've done studies on this. Beyond a certain point, wealth and money and privilege and access and luxury does not make you happier. And we are continually being brainwashed into this idea that it does. That our celebrities and our CEOs and the people who live at the top of our society with the way more than they actually need forever, in a society where there are still people who are starving, who are working, who are doing things that we are saying, this is what makes you good in the system. They are participating and they still don't have enough. We make that okay because we want to be like them one day. We don't want to redistribute and take away from the rich because we don't want to take away our capacity to become rich like that one day. Because we still believe that would make us happy, when the reality is it wouldn't. Having enough will make us happy. If we could get to a place where everyone in society, to the degree that they can be productive, they are productive. So they still offer something. So again, I'm not saying that we want just everyone laying around and like 10 people working and everyone else just gets redistributed wealth. because it's energy and it's time and it's a lot of work to keep society going. Everyone would have to participate to the degree that they could participate. And then if we understood that there's always going to be a discrepancy in the human race around how much certain people can do and certain people can't. We're never going to all be equal. There are always going to be some of us who are more capable of being more productive in a way that's helpful for society, for where it's at right now, than others. But if we continue to say, well, we're going to continue to base whether or not you get to have a nice life based on where society is at right now and whether or not your specific skill set matches that, which again, you didn't choose, you were just born into it, we're going to continue to have a shitty culture. Right? Because again, like now, if you're not a tech person, like generally speaking, you're not going to be rich. If you were someone born with a real technical mind 100 years ago, your skills wouldn't have been valued. If you weren't really good, right? If you weren't really good at working the fields 100, 200 years ago, your skills weren't valued. It's completely based on just where society is right now, where we're at, what we deem as valuable and not valuable, again, partially from Matrix and partially just from what we're producing right now, what it's taking to keep society going right now. None of us chose that. None of us chose to have a brain that could do that or not do that. And yet, we're walking around like it's just a personal choice. If you have money, if you're valuable in our system, it's because you chose to be, and if you don't and you aren't, it's just because you're not. And therefore, you don't deserve provision. Or you do deserve way more provision than you'll ever need. It's stupid. And again, I mean that in the sense that the indoctrination and the system is stupid, not anyone listening. This isn't a direct attack on any of us, because again, we were all indoctrinated into this system that none of us created. We all have these judgments and we all have these ideas to a degree, not because of us. And again, we're all trying to participate in a system. We're all complicit in it to a degree because we're trying to live in it. We're trying to survive within it. You can't just do whatever the fuck you want and expect to be okay. Right? We're all complicit because we all want to live. We all want to try to have a nice life. And again, we're being told that this is what a nice life is and this is how you get it. And we believe it because, of course. So there's accumulation and expansion for the sake of it, being safety, right? I see so many spiritual people being like, if you're a millionaire, that's good because now more of the money is in the hands of someone good. And I'm like, no, because if you're putting that $1 million into a $1 million home, what did you fucking do for anybody? And did that actually make you happier? Did that make your life better? What does 8 extra bedrooms do for you that 2 bedrooms can't? It doesn't make sense. To expand because you can is not necessarily beneficial. And again, if the expansion is now at the expense of you having time and energy and resources to give to yourself, to give to other people, to actually give to other people, to actually make things more fair in a system that is inherently unfair. For you to have those 8 more bedrooms, or those 2 more animals, or that more property, or you expand your business for the sake of the expansion. And then again, now you need more resource, you need more money, you need more help from other people, you need more from others. How was that helpful? It wasn't. It's not more money in the hands of good people now. Now it's more money again in the hands of another person who's spending it on shit that doesn't help anyone. Because it doesn't make you safer, and it doesn't make you happier, and it doesn't make your life better. And again, right? I'm not saying we should all be like absolute minimalists who never enjoy anything and everything is just, right, everything is just exactly what I need and then nothing more. No, of course not. We can have enjoyment. We can have luxury to a degree. We can have expansion to a degree. But again, we have to really weigh this against how much is it costing? How much is it costing me? How much is it costing others? Because even, right, you build your business to be $1 million business, now you have to maintain that. Is it sustainable? Is it maintainable? Because now you have this $1 million house you have to pay off. Right? Like, we have to be future pace. How much is this going to cost? And is that beneficial to anybody? Accumulation for the sake of accumulation, again, is never going to get rid of our existential dread and our existential crises and the existential reality that we're all going to die and that we can all suffer and that there are some things that money can't buy our way out of. It's never going to get rid of the idea that when we lay in bed at night, we're afraid and we're alone sometimes. And yet, in our culture, we're pretty much convinced that it will. You just keep getting more money, you just keep getting more things, more luxury, and you'll be in bliss. Like, how many of our freaking abundance coaches are showing it like, I'm just in absolute bliss all the time. No, they're not. They're lying. No one is in bliss all the time. Money is not making them happier than you to the degree that it's gone beyond just helping them have a reasonably good life. It's a lie. It's an absolute lie, and we have to stop falling for it. Okay? And number 3, changing yourself is how you get connection. Complete bullshit. Complete bullshit. You want people to know who you are? Changing yourself into something you think they would like is never going to make you feel connected. And it sounds obvious, but that is what we are indoctrinated to think and do and believe in our culture. If you feel alone, if you feel isolated, if you don't feel like you have friends, it's because there's something wrong with you. Change yourself. Right? Do you see that the same message over and over again in all of these lies? You're not making enough money? Change yourself. You're not in a position where you've accumulated a lot so people look at you and see the promise of transcendence from pain and our existential guilt and dread. Change yourself. You don't feel connected, people aren't connecting to you. Change yourself. It all comes down to there's nothing wrong with us, right? There's nothing wrong with society, there's nothing wrong with the way things are. It's always the individual. And, right, to a degree, we like that. We believe that message because that is an easier message to swallow than the system is fucked up, right? If it's all our fault, if everything is because of me, I'm not connected, I'm not making money, I don't have lavish luxury, and it's all because of me, then that makes us feel like I can make better, different choices, and then I will have those things. Guaranteed. This personal sovereignty narrative, we want to believe it because it makes us feel empowered. And again, to a degree, we can make choices. To a degree, we can change. To a degree, we can grow. To a degree, we have opportunity to make things better for ourselves. This is true. I'm not saying we don't have capacity. I'm not saying there aren't people in our society who are struggling because they could do better in certain ways. What I am saying is, you change yourself is not the universal answer to everything. And some of it is the system. So we, right now, live in a culture that is very afraid of vulnerability, that is very afraid of authenticity that does not want to be reminded that we can be in pain, that we can suffer, that there are inequities. So to be vulnerable, to be real in any of these ways, a lot of the time gets us rejected because we remind people of their vulnerability. We remind people, or we break through the glass, the delusion that poor people or sick people or struggling people are bad, when we're people that other people know and care about who are struggling or sick or don't have enough. We break that thing, and then people are like, no, well, I don't want to look at that, because then that would mean I can't keep my judgment, and I can't keep just going on doing better for myself and assuming that everyone else who doesn't have what I have is just making bad choices. We're not taught to authentically relate to each other. We are taught from very, 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 very early that to be rejected is to die. That to be rejected is to not have our needs met. That to be rejected is to not be safe. And that the way to be accepted is to figure out what everyone else is doing and do that. And for a long time, for most of human history, that was true. Right? The nervous systems we have that evolved and got passed down are all geared towards fitting in. Because for hundreds of thousands of years, that is the thing that basically guaranteed your survival. If you could fit in, you were going to be taken care of. If you couldn't fit in, you were going to die. The people that didn't fit in died. So we have to understand we're always going to have that biology. And that is always going to be manipulated and preyed upon by advertisers and people who want to sell us shit for profit. Change yourself. Go to the seminar. Become enlightened. Like this capitalist idea of fit in or die. Become better. Become transcended. Heal your trauma. Become your higher self. Become connected to your star seed. What? Yeah, it's in our spirituality. As in our spirituality, quote unquote. It's in our personal growth. It's in all these places where we're telling ourselves, I'm different. Right? I'm not going for the designer handbag. I'm not going for the big lawyer job. That's all brainwashed sheeple shit. I'm trying to become my most transcended, unemotional, never affected by anything, never negative, never sad, highest love vibration self. Why? So that people will like you. So that you won't get kicked out of the tribe. So that you will survive. It's not different. We're being manipulated. That to be weak, to be vulnerable, to be scared, to have negative emotions, to not know what you're going through, to need support, to have an unregulated nervous system, to have sadness. Is something wrong with you that means you deserve to be not accepted, and it's a problem with you that you need to change with spirituality or self-help or self-improvement. We still look at people who have depression and anxiety like they're a problem to be fixed. No. Sometimes it means there are things in their life that are out of alignment and they're having an emotional response to that. Sometimes people are born with brain chemistry that is just different than others, and we don't know why that is. And again, what does that do? That triggers our fear state. Well, then I might have a situation where I'm suffering and in pain and it's not my fault and there's nothing I can do about it. And I don't want to think about that. So I have to make up a reason why that person just deserves it or is shitty or isn't spiritual, how they are just making bad choices and they could get out of it and they just aren't. And we do that for ourselves. We don't do that for them. Right? We get on the internet and we say, you don't look healthy. I hope that you take care of yourself. Because we don't want to believe that someone is doing everything they possibly can do to take care of themselves and they're still sick. Because what would that mean about us? That we too could get into a situation where we're vulnerable, even though we're making all the best choices we can possibly be making, and we have pain and suffering, and that we don't like that. So we boiled everything down to, it's just a personal choice. You don't fit in, it's because there's something wrong with you. And if you don't fit in, you don't fit in because you represent vulnerability. And I know that at this point, we're also finding a lot of people who find connection via their vulnerability, and it becomes their entire identity. But I think, again, that's just like a balancing, right? That's the pendulum swinging way the other way of, like, for so long we've not been allowed to express our vulnerabilities that now we're swinging way the other way. And I think that makes sense. We're finding connection through our vulnerability. We're finding identity through our vulnerability as we're no longer having to suppress it. But I think we're going to come back to a healthy medium where we realize that, like, we're all just human. We all have some vulnerability. We all have some strength. Nothing is our defining thing. And how do we connect as whole human beings to each other? Well, we connect over both of our strength and our weakness. We connect with our vulnerability and where we're doing good. We connect over what we can give and what we need. Real connection comes from showing up as a whole human being that's all different kinds of things at every given time, and meeting with another whole human being who's all different kinds of things at every given time. This idea that when I become totally fixed and transcended, that is when I will have connection. When I have all the right things, that is when I will have friends. Then I'll manifest my tribe when I finally heal all my trauma and fix all my wounds and become my highest starseed self. It's bullshit. No, you won't. Because A, that's never going to happen. You're going to grow, you're going to change, you're going to become better, you're going to heal your nervous system, all the things are going to happen, and you're still going to be human on the other side. And unless and until we start finding people who can just hang with real people, we're not going to be connected over there any more than we're connected over here. You might find people who like you now that you're all put together, but then you're going to always feel like, well, what are they going to do when I have a down day? This idea that we're going to become what society wants us to become, and then that's going to make us connected, is a lie. Enough is enough. Enough productivity, enough accumulation. Anything beyond that is degradation for all of us, the producer and the consumer. Really believing that you can't be a whole person, and again, having been trained in our real reality that we can't be a whole person, is the reason we don't have connection. Because none of us are transcended, all of us are vulnerable. And if we can't get to a point where we can just be okay with that and connect with each other anyways, or with that, we will never have connection. So where in your life can you start to not participate in those lies? Where can you forgive yourself because it is absolutely not your fault? Where can you process the ways in which those lies have harmed you? So rather than feeling guilty or ashamed about it, say, no. Start with, where do you need to love and support yourself in the areas in which these lies have harmed you? Start there. There's no guilt and there's no shame. It's not your fault. And then when you process that, then you can start to look to, where can I start to disengage? And I'm not going to tell you how to do that, because for every single one of us, it's a little bit different. Some of us can stop shopping at Walmart and we can quit our second job and we can be fine. Some of us can't do that. We still need those things to keep our heads above water. So there's no right or wrong. It's to what degree can you pull out of the system? You do that. And then you redistribute and you help others in the whatever way you can. You don't need to keep accumulating more for yourself past a certain point. And where can we start to be community-based in terms of person to person? We stop valuing people based on, well, what do you produce in our society, and is that valuable to our society or not? And we start seeing people as people. Everyone is trying their best within the conditions they were given, and that is reality. So how do we support people? That's the question. So those are the 3 biggest lies, scams of our society as I see them. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think? Support yourself first with all these self-love tools, right? That's what the mystery school is for. In the ways that you were harmed by this, start there. So you can work your way out of it and then allow that to trickle out as your impact on society. Okay? So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. And until then, mwah!